Chapter 40. He ran far that day, away from the town, letting the wind wash him. When he returned to the West End, he heard in the distance Mrs. Pickwell whistling her children to dinner. Though he had heard the whistles many times, he had not answered it since his first day in town. Now he felt, as he had that day, that it was meant for him. This time, of course, there was a difference. He was no stranger. He was Maniac Magee, the kid who had walked barefoot through the dump near their house. The Pickwell kids cheered when he showed up and treated him like a legend in the flesh. Mrs. Pickwell did better. She treated him like a member of the family, as if she would have been surprised if he hadn't come on the whistle. Nor was Maniac the only visitor for dinner. Mr. Pickwell had brought home a down-and-out shoe salesman in sore need of sympathy and a good meal. As Maniac ate and talked and laughed his way through dinner, he couldn't help thinking of the Beals. How alike the two families were. Friendly, giving, accepting. So easily he could picture the Beals' brown faces around this dinner table, and the little Pickwell kids' white bodies in the bathtub at 728 Sycamore. Whoever had made of Hector Street a barrier, it was surely not these people. Fortified by his good time at the Pickwells, Maniac returned to the McNabbs. After the East End scare, Russell and Piper no longer demanded stunts of him in return for attending school. On the one hand, this was a relief to Maniac. On the other, it left him with less influence over them. He could always extort a day or two in class from them with the free weekly pizza. Beyond that, he goaded them toward school any way he could. He organized a marbles tournament that could take place only in the schoolyard during recess. He tried reading to them, as he had to Hester and Lester and to Grayson, but they paid as much attention as the Roaches. He took them to the library, then scraped that idea after their shenanigans left the librarians blubbering and blue-faced. Then May arrived with its warm weather and blew away what little power he had left. The boys began again to dream of travel. Wood appeared in the backyard. They were building a raft. "Gonna sail down the river to the ocean," they said. One day he heard frenzied horn honking and screaming. He turned to see an ancient, rusty, gas-hog convertible rolling by, with Russell behind the wheel and Piper jumping up and down and shrieking in the back seat. By the time Maniac caught up, they were gone and the car was shuddering against a telephone pole. Another time he had to run them down and haul them back to Dorsey's grocery, where he made them empty their bulging pockets of the 50 bubblegums they had stolen. It was a maddening, chaotic time for Maniac. Running in the mornings and reading in the afternoons gave him just enough stability to endure the zany nights at the McNabbs. When he asked himself why he didn't just drop them, the answer was never clear. It wasn't so much that he wanted to stay as that he couldn't go. In some vague way, to abandon the McNabb boys would be to abandon something in himself. He couldn't shake the suspicion that deep inside, Russell and Piper McNabb, in the prayer dark seat of their kidhoods, they were identical to Hester and Lester Beale. But they were spoiling, rotting from the outside in like a pair of peaches in the sun. Soon, unless somebody did something, the rot would reach the pit. And yet he held back. Oh, he prodded and persuaded and inspired and bribed the boys to do right, but he never forced them, never commanded, never shouted, because to do so he would be parental, and he was not yet ready for that. How could he act as a father to these boys when he himself ached to be somebody's son? But then one day the boys went too far. He found them playing with the old glove Grayson had given him for Christmas. As if that weren't bad enough, they were using it as a football, punting it back and forth. Maniac exploded. He popped off for a good 10 minutes, got it all out. This was the last straw, he told them. From now on, it was going to be different. No more Mr. Nice Guy. When I say jump, you say how high. Got it? They got it. For the first time in their lives, the boys were speechless. Speechless as they did their homework that night. Speechless as they went to bed at 9 o'clock. Speechless as they went off to school the next morning. The peace lasted 3 days. Shock accounted for the first day. Second and third days were a new game called obedience, or being good. When the game lost its appeal, Maniac lost his power. He told them to sit. They stood. He told them to stand. They sat. Instead of going to school, they worked on their raft. Instead of doing homework, they played war in the pillbox. They brought their plastic weapons down from the hole and stationed themselves at the two small gunnery slots in the cinder block wall and blasted away at anyone moving through the house, not to mention imaginary rebels streaming through the door and over the windowsills. "Stop!" Maniac finally yelled, and snatched the two red gun barrels protruding from the slots. In a moment, two more barrels appeared. "Stop!" he commanded. "Ain't shooting you," Russell whined. "We're shooting them rebels. Bam, bam, bam. Pow! Got one. Pow! Bam! Got another. Bam, bam. I said stop." Maniac grabbed the guns, threw them on the floor, and stomped on them. He didn't stop till they were plastic splinters. The only sound was that of the turtle scratching somewhere in the room. The gunnery slots framed the boys' dumbstruck faces. Russell was the first to speak. "Get out of my house." "Yeah," sneered Piper. "Out of here." Maniac went upstairs, got his satchel, and was gone. That night and the next night he slept at the park. The following day, as he sat reading in the library, in came the McNabb boys. They rushed to him. "Hey, Maniac," blurted Piper. "We've been looking all over for you. You gotta come to my birthday party. I'm having a party tomorrow. What do you say, huh? You coming, huh?" Maniac couldn't believe it. The ugly feelings of the other day showed nowhere on their excited faces. "Come on, Maniac, you gotta." And just like that, as he stared at them, the idea came. An idea as zany as they were. The words seemed to lift right off their faces like sunburnt skin peeling. "Well, okay," he said, "on one condition." "What's that?" "If I can bring somebody with me." "Sure, bring everybody. We're gonna party." The librarian edged closer to the phone. Chapter 41. The McNabb boys didn't know whom they did expect Maniac to bring to the party, but one thing for sure, they did not expect him to come walking through the front door with a black kid. And that was only half of it. From the way the kid swaggered in, from the candy bar that jutted like a chocolate stogie from the corner of his mouth, from the ripe stone evil scowl on his face, the kid had to be none other than Mars Bar Thompson himself. If black meant bad, if black meant in-your-face nastiness, if black meant as far from white as you could get, then Mars Bar Thompson was the blackest of the black. Here in the middle of their living room, stopping the party, the neighborhood kids, the Cobras, even George McNabb, stopping them dead as traffic. Just walked in through the front door, the steel door, breezed right on in, past the bars, standing there. I own this jointing there, before they knew what was happening, before anyone could reach for anything. Which, of course, is just what Maniac had in mind. Remembering how little Grayson had known about black people and black homes. Thinking of the McNabbs' wrong-headed notions. Thinking of Mars Bar's knee-jerk reaction to anyone wearing a white skin. And thinking naturally, what else would you expect? Whites never go inside blacks' homes, much less inside their thoughts and feelings. And blacks are just as ignorant of whites. What white kid could hate blacks after spending 5 minutes in the Beals house? And what black kid could hate whites after answering Mrs. Pickwell's dinner whistle? But the East Enders stayed in the East and the West Enders stayed in the West, and the less they knew about each other, the more they invented. It hadn't been easy, finding Mars Bar, taking all his lip about cheating on the race, taking some bumps, some shoves, Mars goading him to fight, but keeping his own cool, matching Mars Bar's glare for glare, telling him he wasn't as bad as he thought he was. Really stoking him now, making him slam his candy bar to the ground. "No, you want to tell me why I ain't so bad, Fish? Go ahead, for I waste ya, chest to chest." Keeping cool, letting Mars do all the huffing. Simple. You don't cross Hector, you stay over here where it's safe. How bad would you be over there? Stepping back then, folding his arms, smugging it up just enough, standing there in his white skin, gazing nonchalantly about 6 blocks deep in the heart of the black side. "Guess that makes me badder than you." They did not go straight to the McNabbs. First they went to the Pickwells. Maniac wanted Mars Bar to see the best the West End had to offer. The little Pickwells made as much fuss over Mars Bar as over Maniac. They believed, as did all little kids in the West End, that he carried 100 Mars Bars with him at all times. Not surprisingly, Mrs. Pickwell never batted an eye when she saw who was coming to dinner. It was quite a sight, all right. 16 Pickwells plus Maniac, plus a down-and-out golf caddy, 18 so-called white faces in Mars Bar Thompson. To his credit, Mars Bar didn't use the words fish belly or honky once, though on one occasion he did bend the truth of might. When a Pickwell kid asked him if it was true about the famous race in April, did Maniac really beat him going backward? Mars Bar studied his fork for a minute and said, yeah, he went backward, but you got the story wrong. Wasn't me he beat, it was my brother Milky Way. The little kids couldn't understand why the grown-ups laughed for 5 minutes after that. As for Mars Bar himself, his expression never changed until the dinner was almost over, when the littlest non-baby Pickwell, Dolly, called him Mr. Bar, and even then it wasn't so much a smile as a crack in the glare. Even if Mars wasn't letting on, Maniac could tell he was pleased to learn his fame had spread to the west. When they left, half the Pickwell kids followed them, begging Mars to perform his legendary feat of stopping traffic. Don't, Maniac warned, it might not work over here. But the Pickwells persisted, and when they reached Marshall Street, Mars Bar commanded, stay here, and stepped into the traffic. Not only did he shamble, jive, shuck, and hip duty at his own sweet pace, he did something he'd never even done in the East End. He came to a complete and utter halt halfway across and let nothing but the evil in his eyes take care of the rest. He stood like that for 1 full minute. By the time he finally moved on to the far side, so the legend goes, 23 cars, several bicycles, and a bus were stacked to a dead stop in both directions. Maniac hurried across while the Pickwells stood at the curb cheering and waving goodbye. But no one was cheering now in Fort McNabb. And Maniac knew that despite the swagger and the scowl and the chocolate stogie, Mars Bar Thompson was one uneasy dude. Chapter 42. George McNabb was the first to speak up. He was stretched out on the only new piece of furniture in the house, a tilt-back lounge chair. Said McNabb, what's he doing here? The awkward silence that followed was mercifully broken by Piper tugging on Maniac's arm. Where's my birthday present? What'd you get me? Maniac pulled the present from his pocket. Piper exclaimed, a watch! No, said Maniac, a compass. It tells you which direction you're going. Like to the ocean? Asked Russell. The ocean, Mexico, anywhere in the world. Only one thing. What's that? Maniac took the compass from Piper's hand. I'm keeping it till school's over. If you go every day, both of you, then you can have it back and sail around the world. On our raft? Piper cheered. It is a deal. Piper and Russell and Maniac did a 3-way high five. It's a deal. George McNabb pulled himself up from the easy chair and shuffled into the kitchen. He wore bar-backed slippers over bare feet. His white ankles were dirty. He took a beer can from the fridge and headed for the steps. Let me know when it leaves, he said, and went upstairs. Maniac could feel the voltage that surged through Mars Bar and crackled black lightning from his eyes. Quickly, he clapped his hands. Hey, isn't this a party? Where are the games? So they played games. Silly games, whose main object seemed to be shrieking and screaming. Mars Bar allowed himself to be dragged into them, but his jaw was clenched and his eyes kept straying to the gaping hole in the ceiling, and to the cobras who were slouching against the walls and baseboards, sipping beers and watching his every move. None of them had spoken since Mars and Maniac walked in. Of course, as far as the little kids were concerned, the highlight of the whole party was not the birthday boy, Piper McNabb, but the McNabb's new pillbox. They found every excuse to stay inside it. They fought over space at the narrow gunnery slots. When Mars Bar whispered to Maniac, what is that? Maniac said it was a bomb shelter. Then Russell called, let's play Rebels, whites in the pillbox, blacks outside. A cheer went up and a dozen kids stampeded into the pillbox. Their gabbles circled the cinder-block walls and popped from the gunnery slots. I'm going to be white. I'm white. Me too. Too many in here. We need more blacks. Not me. Not me. We ain't got enough guns. Only the ones with the guns are in. The rest of you got to get out. Yet black. Give me a gun. I had it first. Come on, you meatballs. Blacks is the best part. You get to charge. Yeah, we get to lose. Look, you can use beer cans for grenades. You can lob grenades. Then you do it. Well, somebody got to be black, else we ain't playing. I'm counting. Time I hit 10, I want to see 5 of you out here. 1. Russell counted, no one came out. Not at 9, not at 10, not after 10. Maniac and Mars Bar stared in silence at the gunnery slots, where wide, open eyes began to appear, one pair atop another. The 3 words that Mars Bar sneered, the joke he spat out, yeah, bomb shelter, did not even have the moment to themselves for less than another word. Geronimo came plunging from the sky and landed with the floor jarring, heart-stopping crash directly behind him. A cobra had jumped from the hole, a fat, red-haired cobra who was now rolling on the floor and laughing so hard, as were all the cobras, that his face matched the color of his hair. You see him? You see him? I never see his face. Somebody check out his pants. Check out his drawers. Oh, man. Oh. Maniac had to wrap Mars Bar in a bear hug to keep him from charging the fat red roller. The laughter stopped as if cut by scissors. The cobras were standing. John McNabb sauntered forward. You got a problem, Sonny? That wasn't funny, John, said Maniac. He could have been hurt. McNabb kept his eyes on Mars Bar. I ain't talking to you, McGee. I'm talking to Sonny here. Don't you like our parties, Sonny boy? Mars Bar strained against Maniac's arms. You ain't got to worry about me coming to no more of your parties, Fishbelly, and you ain't got to worry about me invading this piss hole. Anybody come to a block away, they faint from the smell. McNabb advanced. Maniac shouted, John, you owe me one. I brought the boys back. McNabb took another step, then stayed. The cobras stayed, and Maniac, clamping the struggling Mars Bar for dear life, lugged him down a gauntlet of seething eaves to the door and the street. Mars Bar wrenched free and stomped on ahead. Maniac followed. It was almost dark. High above, the streetlights were buzzing on one by one. After several blocks, Mars Bar wheeled. You suckered me. You softened me up with them pick peoples. Then bring me here? What'd you think? I was gonna cry? Okay, I come over. I did it. It's done. And don't you be coming around no more. You hear me, Fish? 'Cause you ain't only seen me half bad yet. He turned and headed due east. Maniac walked another way. It was a good question. What had he thought? What had he expected? A miracle? Well, come to think of it, maybe one had happened. While he was looking for one miracle, maybe another had snuck up on him. It happened as he was clamping and lunging Mars Bar down the gauntlet to cobras, trying to keep him alive. And what was Mars Bar doing? Fighting him. Maniac, straining to get loose and bust some cobras. Outnumbered, outweighed, but not out-hearted. That's when Maniac felt it. Pride. For this East End warrior whom Maniac could feel trembling in his arms, scared as any normal kid would be, but not showing it to them. Yeah, you're bad all right, Mars Bar. You're more than bad. You're good. Maniac stopped. He had been walking in circles. It was dark. He turned one way, then another, for the briefest moment thinking to go home. Thinking, it's time to go home now. Then remembering that once again, he had no home to go to.